What's going on, everyone? I want to start off today's video by reading a comment that I'd received on a previous video titled The Rise of Weak Men. Here's what the viewer had sent to me. He said, "What are you doing here? Trying to make money? Trying to prove your manhood? Because it seems you are just aimlessly fixating on pointless shit like NoFap, obsessing over mindset, and learning how to create a fake masculine personality in your excessive spare time that could be put to real use. Why would we listen to you for life advice, business advice, or advice on masculinity? I'm not saying this just to hate for no reason, but why should anyone take advice from a self-glorified deadbeat with too much time on his hands?" Now, definitely there are some things that this guy gets wrong about me. There's so much that I wish I could just explain to him about what I feel and what I perceive, and I'm sure I could come to some understanding with him. But I want to talk about some of the things, some of the accusations he's made against me that are totally fair. Why is it that I'm so obsessed with NoFap and about mindset on the topics of sadhana? Like, why am I, as someone who hasn't achieved a whole lot, why do I feel that these are important things worth talking about? And to answer that question, I want to reference this other vocabulary, this other term that keeps showing up on a number of my videos: incels. The word incel, which means involuntary celibate. It's like an online forum community sort of noun, an urban dictionary sort of term that basically signifies someone who can't attract a woman. And I think it's absolutely fascinating how much value we give our ability to attract women in terms of our worth. For better or worse, this is like a notion of a man's character or success. His ability to attract is something that is a determinant of his worth. Now, certainly a lot of what these online forums of inceldom sort of signify, it's a lot of like psychosomatic conditions. These people aren't necessarily ugly, or they don't necessarily like lack the stuff that would attract women. A lot of it is just a mindset, it's their way of thinking. But I do feel this idea of being an incel could apply to a lot of people, to many of us, in a more spiritual, metaphoric level. On some level, being an incel is a symbol of being impotent, to not be able to bring results. On a more pulled back level, I think that's something that I've struggled with all my life, a sort of creative inceldom, a metaphoric impotency. And this idea of a spiritual impotency or a creative impotency is terrifying. That sneaking suspicion that there's something really cool that I could be doing. There's something amazing that could unfold in my psyche, in my work, in the fantasies of my mind being pulled into reality. I'm not sure what I'm capable of. I'm not sure what limitations are just set in stone by the world and what is really actually unrealistic for me, and what is a result of me like putting the brakes on my own life. For many of us, it could very well be that we're like a Ferrari and we have all this capacity to accelerate and go as fast as we can, and yet we're constantly putting the brakes. We're pushing on the brakes and trying to accelerate at the same time. And those brakes are the vices that we carry with us. I've known about things like the law of attraction and the superconscious mind for about 4 years now. This idea that you can tap into hunches, you can tap into inspired action, and when you take action from that perspective, it's so powerful. And these are powerful ideas. They could bring about amazing results in one's life in fairly short order. And yet every time in the last 4 years, when I drank to excess, which was quite a few times when I lived in LA, like living that lifestyle, or when I skipped a meditation or failed to meditate or failed to visualize or failed to journal, all these things I was doing, on some level, I was putting the brakes on my own success, on the things that I could bring about. And it was entirely me in that scenario. It wasn't some agent telling me no. It wasn't a casting director saying I'm not good enough. When I drank to excess, or when I failed to meditate, when I failed to have the right powerful disciplines in my life, I was cutting myself off. And that is a very sneaking, terrible feeling to carry with you. Take the example of NoFap, because now my biggest videos on this channel are not related to this topic, and yet it really is the undercurrent of everything I talk about. It really is that through line in every video I make. No matter what I'm saying, what I'm really trying to communicate is the idea that you can cultivate life force energy within you, connect it to the universal subconscious, and express your artistry through that energy. When I first started practicing NoFap very seriously, which might have been about a year ago, about a month before I started this channel, I might have been at around 25 days hard mode, and I remember that there was a Holi party coming up. Holi, Holi. That's the Hinduism festival of colors. It's a spring festival, very popular in India. People dress in white and they throw colors on each other. There was this Holi related party coming up with a bunch of Indian people, and I knew I didn't want to go because every time in the last 7 years when I would go to like an Indian people party, I would often feel kind of embarrassed or ashamed of myself. When I was in college, it was because I was a B+ student, and I carried this feeling that because I don't have an amazing GPA to the capacity of every other Indian American that my parents would tell me about, I was less than, I was not worthy. And as I became an adult, it was because I was a teacher. I wasn't in med school, or I wasn't an engineer. I was nobody by comparison. And so I carried this like lack of worth and embarrassment, like, I don't know, maybe people don't want to see me, or maybe I shouldn't be a part of this group. So I just carried this feeling a lot in the last 7 years about going to such parties. But I did end up going to this Holi party, and everything was different. I felt as if I was tapped into some current, some source of magic, and all around me was beauty. The people looked beautiful, the environment was charged, and even though I had nothing going for me, at least that's the way I perceived myself, I felt as if everyone was smiling at me. Everyone was giving me love and that acknowledgement. It's as if everyone was nodding at me and saying, yes, and I started talking to this young couple, this girl who objectively was very average looking, and her boyfriend. And while I was talking to them, I just felt like I was loving the conversation. And in a weird way, I was like admiring her femininity. She was beautiful to me, even though she might not have been beautiful to me. She might not have been interesting to me prior to this discipline. I was so compelled by her energy. And it wasn't from like a state of being super horny. It was just like this appreciation. And in the midst of that conversation, I saw out of the corner of my eye that there was this old man sort of sitting by himself. So I excused myself from this conversation to talk to this old man. I'm not sure why, but I just went up to him. And he introduced himself. He was from Pakistan. He only spoke in Urdu. Luckily, I'm fluent in Hindi, so we carried on talking. And he just told me about his love for the Islamic tradition. He was a Muslim, and he just naturally started this conversation about spirituality. And everything he began to talk about was everything that I was going through, all these things that I was perceiving. And it was this beautiful 10-minute conversation. And at the end of it, he said, "Coming here today was worth it for me. I'm so glad I came because I got to meet you. I'm so happy right now." And I left that party just wondering, like, how did I have such a great time? How was I so loved by this community? I was still a person of little accomplishment, and yet I didn't feel that sense of lack that I'd been feeling for the last 7 years. I felt full of myself. I felt full of life and abundance. It's like this commenter had said about me. I have no real business experience or life achievements to show for myself, and yet I've perceived something. And the reason I'm so passionate about things like NoFap and mindset is because the right habits, the right tactics, the right disciplines, they bring back your potency in the world. You stop being that spiritual incel, that creative incel. You have something to give. And when you engage in the right disciplines, you just bloom. It doesn't matter if anyone else is saying no to you or your dreams. It's like you will bloom where you're planted. You'll be like that flower that grows out of a crack in a sidewalk. Like, you have to bloom when you're full of this energy. There's a saying in Hinduism, Har Har Mahadev. It's like a battle cry. It means hail victory or hail Shiva, the destroyer. Mahadev is a name for Shiva. It's a phrase in recent times that I sort of repeat under my breath when I need courage, when I need to take action on something, I need to shake someone's hand, and I need to like step out in faith a little bit. I just say, Har Har Mahadev, and I just like plunge forward. It's like my own battle cry under my breath. But I really love it because it also carries a second meaning in it. Har Har also means in every person, like every person is. And so the second meaning of Har Har Mahadev is in every person is the Mahadev. In every person is that divine energy. And I used to find stuff like this, I'm sure, very cheesy or cliche, but now it is something that I utterly believe. In every person is a seat of expression, a jewel, a great gift that they could share with the world. I know this to be true. And it can manifest in a number of ways. It might manifest as you being able to give empathy and sympathy to people, to be a great healer, to become a great engineer, to be a great actor, a great musician. There are gifts and jewels that you could share with the world. And yet we live in a time and we have such an access to vices and machinations that can stifle it, that can kill it, that can make us impotent to our gifts. And so the reason I'm obsessed with things like NoFap, mindset, the right sadhana, the right daily disciplines, even though I may not be a person of great achievement, is because it means a great deal. It means having access to that expression and avoiding that sort of spiritual inceldom. And for those of us who are willing to take on the right sadhanas, the right disciplines, to build up this energy, to let it bubble out into our artistry, to us I say we are going to bloom where we are planted. To us I say greatness is coming. To us I say Har Har Mahadev. Cheers.